Hey guys, it's me, Ty, and welcome back to another video here today on the channel. And today, we are going to be ranking the 4 modern Mortal Kombat games here today on the channel. Um, you guys probably, or obviously do not know this, but, I recently, in the past few months, or throughout most of the year or so, starting around the summer, have been playing a lot of the modern Mortal Kombat games. Starting from 2011 Mortal Kombat 9 to Mortal Kombat 1. I didn't actually play them in that order necessarily of what year they came out, but I have played them recently. And playing them, it gets me to think about the games and how much I like some of them than others. And it also makes me think about the fact that definitely some of these games are better than the others. Excuse me. So today, what we're going to do is discuss each of the games, their best qualities, and be ranking them, each of these qualities, 0 out of 10, to see overall which of these games we think is the best out of the 4 modern Mortal Kombat games. So other than that, let's get right into this. First off, yes, I have the tier list here. I couldn't find a tier list with only the modern games, so we're just gonna have those in the background. And then the last thing I want to say is that we aren't going to be going over Mortal Kombat versus DC because yes, it technically is the first modern game, technically, but I don't really like to consider it like that, and also I haven't played the game before, so we're also not going to be counting that because I do not own the game. Okay, guys, so we are going to be first starting off with the oldest of the games, which is the most recent one I just recently got, Mortal Kombat 9, or Mortal Kombat 2011, if that's what you want to call it. It's simply just known as Mortal Kombat, but it's can be known as either or. But basically, Mortal Kombat 9, as I like to call it, is the first of our reboot modern series. It was the first of the games to start to really, it was the first of the games to really start embracing a lot of the modern techniques they have today. It was kind of the one that kind of, created a lot of things, or at least brought them into reality. And it was also the first game made under Warner Brothers because this is at the time that Warner Brothers had bought the rights to the people that make the Mortal Kombat games from Midway and converted them into NetherRealm Studios, who we know today to be making Mortal Kombat games. Um, this game I recently just played. Like I just a few days ago I just finished the game. And from the time right now, I really enjoy this game. I don't have every collectible yet, and I barely have gotten into it, other than the story mode, but still, I have done enough to think and have enough knowledge to know of what I want to talk about for this game. So there will be some simple ranking stuff we'll be doing. We'll be looking over we'll be rating each part of the game as from a 0 to 10, so 0 out of 10, and for each aspect. So aspects like gameplay, the characters, unlockables, the story mode, fatalities, all the basic things that make a Mortal Kombat game a good Mortal Kombat game. And so let's get right into the first part, the characters. Um, you can have a Mortal Kombat game or any fighting game in general without a fighting game roster. You gotta have a good roster and a good set of characters. And I think this game really does that really well. The roster is really good, filled with some of the older characters, even a few new ones, that make the game just so good. It makes sure that you know every character in the roster while also keeping it brand new and fresh at the same time. And I think that's a really good quality. And plus, for those out there looking for new characters, There are DLC. This is the first ever game to feature DLC, paid DLC to be precise, and new characters entirely. Two of the DLC characters are returning characters, but those don't really. They still are pretty original on their own, and are pretty different from their previous appearances, which is really cool. Starting off, we have a lot of the main characters. So obviously, you can't have a Mortal Kombat game with like Liu Kang or Raiden, Kung Lao, Johnny Cage, Sonya, Jax, all the main characters basically. There are tons of them. Tons of fan favorites, even some obscure characters. A lot of secret characters from previous games make appearances as main roster fighters, which is really cool. Being more involved in the story as this game's story mode actually starts getting more cinematic and unique, giving more personalities to characters and makes us enjoy them just so much more. And and I think that's just such a good thing because most Mortal Kombat game characters are pretty good. Even some of the ones you can normally hate, you can still kind of like in some ways. But if there's excuse me there, but there's one thing that this game does that proves that NetherRealm Studios is a very capable game company is something that a lot of people can't really do. Is take a character that's similar to another character or literally the exact same and make them completely different. You probably already know who I'm talking about in the roster, but it's Sub Zero. So the whole story in the game is all about the fact that um Raven's got a vision from the future and it's trying to warn him on how to change things. But while he's trying to change things, things from the previous Mortal Kombat games, like the older games, get changed. One of the biggest things is the fact that Smoke in the original games becomes a Cyber Lin Kuei. But this time, it's different. Smoke is saved by Raiden, but it comes at the cost of Sub-Zero being taken and being turned into a Cyber Lin Kuei. So Cyber Sub-Zero is born in the game. He is a separate playable character from Sub-Zero. So you're probably wondering, how are they going to make Cyber Sub-Zero a thing? It's just Sub-Zero, but a robot. How do you make it different? Like, Cyrax and Sector in the game, they have skins that are their human variants. They have the exact same movesets. Like, obviously, they make them look a bit different to be more human-like, but still, they're just the same thing. Um, and that's the thing, though. They make his moveset a lot more robotic. They take a lot of inspiration from characters like most from what I would say is mostly Cyrax. And they implement that into a Cyber Sub-Zero. Basically, he has things like ice bombs now. He can his slide and ice attacks are a bit different. They're not too terribly different, but they are slightly different. Um, I'd say that his gameplay is a lot more slow and janky. He's a lot more of a heavier fighter than the lighter Sub-Zero, who's a lot more fast paced. And I just think that shows that NetherRealm can really make a unique character. Obviously, I'm not going to go too much in detail. I don't want to get on that forever. But it's still pretty cool how they can pull off such a unique thing with a fighter. Um, but then obviously, if we gotta talk about the roster, we gotta talk about the DLC. First off, they add some new characters that we haven't ever seen before. First off, a character that a lot of people like is Scarlet, who has only appeared in 2 Mortal Kombat games now, but her 2 appearances are very good. First off, her moveset is pretty unique compared to a lot of the other female fighters. She's very similar to Melina in her theme and just how she plays, or just looks in general. But her theme is all blood. She's got blood abilities. She likes the blood stuff. It's cool like that. And then she also has a lot of really unique things, but just keep her distinct. Like she's like I mentioned, she's very similar to Melina in a lot of ways, but they also keep her different enough to keep her from not being Melina, which is a pretty good thing to have. In the next for DLC, oh jeez, I can't stop the yawning. Apologies. Um, it's pretty tired right now. Um, Moving on with that, we have the two characters that are returning, which are pretty good returning characters. First, we have Rain, who, while Rain has appeared in past games and he makes appearances in some of the 3D era games, it's very low appearances, and he's always been that character that's movesets have been really weird. He's just been kind of a carbon copy of a lot of the characters most of the time. And the only time he really got to be slightly different was in his first appearance in the 3D era, which was very bland, honestly, in my opinion. But then this game gives him a bit more. It makes him more still of a ninja, but more magical, and he's got the magic powers, the water abilities, and the all the cool water abilities he gets. I mean, they make them more unique, and that's pretty good. I really like that. I think they did him pretty well in the game, and his design is also pretty good and fits him really well. Um, Keep in mind though that most of the DLC characters don't appear in the story, if not all of them, but it's still cool that they're in the game. Um, Next off we have Kenshi, who is returning from the 3D era. Not surprised that Kenshi returns. He's definitely a fan favorite from the 3D era. His moveset was pretty cool and unique, and also his whole like psychic blind powers are pretty just neat in general. I definitely think they expand on them more in Mortal Kombat 9 here. I do think his later variations from Mortal Kombat X and 1 that we'll talk about later are definitely better, but I still think that they did him pretty well enough to say that he's still a pretty solid character, and he's still pretty fun to play. But next, we get to our two first ever guest characters. The first ever is a character that came out right when the game came out, but he was only playable on PlayStations. Specifically the game console that you could play it on, which is PS3 or PS Vita. When that is Kratos. I think the two guest characters they added were very good choices for Mortal Kombat due to how brutal they are in their games slash movies, and I think that just makes them very good. I do question the second guy that we'll talk about in a bit, who is Freddy Krueger, but I question how he fits well enough compared to a lot of the other horror icons they've added, but I still think he's a good enough character that they made him well. But Kratos is a very exclusive character who has a lot of very unique moveset choices. His moveset is very unique, utilizing a lot of weapons from his games, specifically the old God of War games, because this is the old Kratos, not the newer one. Um, and I think it's really cool how some of his moves have quick time events, and depending on if you do them or not, depends on how you do the combo. And it's just so cool and unique. I think he is honestly just a really good guest character on his own just because of his gameplay and just how cool he is in the game alone. Um, and then moving on, we have the second one who is the DLC paid fighter, which is Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. He is very cool, and I'm a little not surprised yet, a little surprised that he is more of a zoner and unique like keep away fighter compared to his claws and stuff. You think he'd be a bit more of a mid-range fighter with the claws helping him keep at range. But nope, he likes to play the keep away game, which is okay. But still, I kind of find him fun, and I think he's still pretty good overall. Um, but that's basically about the roster. There's a lot of fighters I didn't talk about, but we'll get more into them during like story and stuff. Um, Moving on to that, we have, but for the characters overall for fighters, I will give it honestly a 9 out of 10. There are some things that are a bit underwhelming, and some fighters just feel a lot worse or better than others. But I still think that each character is extremely unique, very fun, and I don't think there's a single character that gets left out. So I definitely think that it's a good 9 out of 10, and it's very close to a 10 out of 10. Um, Moving on to story mode. The story mode is crazy all over the place. But not in a bad way. The whole story is all about how Raiden gets that um thing from the future, and he's just trying to prevent all that from happening. But in the process, many things get changed. Sub-Zero becomes a robot. Many of the iconic characters from Mortal Kombat die. But it does at the end help him prevent Armageddon, and the death of Shao Kahn occurs, with Shao Kahn officially dying in the game, which eventually he does return in Mortal Kombat 11 and 1, but 11 is because of some time travel stuff that we'll get into later. But I think the story mode is very good. There's a lot of very funny jokes. The animation's still pretty fun. The voice acting's pretty solid. Each character is enjoyable, and I just think it hits you really hard at around the end of the story when they're starting to kill off so many characters, and I think it's kind of fun how they do it. Even if some of the story mode can be a little cheesy at times. I give the story mode honestly a good 10 out of 10 just because of the fact. Actually, no, I give it a 9 out of 10 because each character is fun, unique, and likable in the story mode. It gives them so much personality, and I just think that it shows you it can be both a good, entertaining story and also a Mortal Kombat game at the same time. But I do think some of the choppy animation wait time and some of the voice acting for the characters can be a little choppy. I sometimes find the voice of the guy, no offense to the guy that was the voice actor for Shao Kahn, but I found his voice to be a little underwhelming and not very scary, but still it's pretty good and it fits him still pretty well though. Now we get into unlockables. Um Mortal Kombat 9 has a lot for the game, surprisingly. The games we'll get into later have a lot more unlockables, but this game still has a lot. Like a lot. A lot more than I thought it would be. The Crypt game mode in that this game, Mortal Kombat X and 11 have, definitely is very, very unique. You can only face like one direction, which is forward in the crypt, and you just gotta go around opening graves and all that stuff, and all these corpses around, and you get rewards. This is how you can get things like second fatalities, different skins, outfits, and also different like concept arts, which is pretty fun. And I think one of the best things it gives you is the gameplay modifiers, which are very, very fun, which we'll talk about later during the gameplay part. But the crypt is very interesting, and then you can get into that one area, which I forget the name of because its name is very confusing, where you can look at different characters' info, descriptions, skins, and just different unlocked things you have. Overall, I think the unlockables are very good. Each character has very good skins from what they have, and I think it just shows that the game definitely wasn't underwhelming with it. So I'm gonna give the Crypt another 9 out of 10. Very strong so far for the ratings. I think I give the Crypt underwhelming a 1 less. Just it's held back by the fact that the Crypt that you can only face one direction. You can only turn slightly to the right sometimes in certain areas, which is kind of weird and random. And just the fact that yeah, I just think it's honestly just the fact that you can't really look around. It's so hard to navigate sometimes. But other than that, I give it a good 9 out of 10. Um, Now we get to gameplay. The gameplay is extremely it can be both slow, fast, and medium pace at the same time. There is no holding you back in this game, and I think that's what's really fun. Um, it really just embraces all of the fast-paced fighting that you want from Mortal Kombat game, while also letting you at the same time take your time and think while you're fighting at the same time. They're really just not going to be going over the top. The gameplay is definitely very different from 3D era and the past games, while also keeping it pretty fun at the end of the day. And overall, I just think it's a very, very good game for gameplay wise. All the characters play very different, despite some characters being very similar. They still play pretty differently in their game plans, and I think that's pretty fun. Also, the fact that gameplay modifiers exist. The gameplay modifiers also are in Mortal Kombat X, but they also somewhat exist in one, but mostly just in like the invasions mode. But they are just so fun in 9. I can't go over how it's just the fact that you can play the game with armless or headless or anything like that. Like you have to play with specific parts of your body missing and only have access to like leg attacks and stuff. It's so cool, unique. And also the game's pretty simplistic inputs also just allow the gameplay to be pretty good for beginners and experienced players. I give the gameplay a 10 out of 10 just because of how much effort was put into it. Next, and the final thing we're going to be talking about are the fatalities. Um, Very specifically, not specifically, but just fatalities in general are very, very unique. They are definitely a bit slower, and just not as high quality as a lot of the newer games, but they still shine in a lot of ways with how creative they can be. And plus, a lot of them are pretty dark at times and can be pretty bloody. Going back to Scarlet, she has some pretty dark ones. Um, and there's just all of them are so creative while being so they could take something so underwhelming and making it so creative that you just got to admire it. And I think I really like that because of that. I'm going to give the fatalities an 8 out of 10 just because of how creative they are. I think they could have made them a bit more cinematic, but I think they still look pretty good. A lot of I think. That's funny. Moving on. So that is everything for Mortal Kombat 9. My opinion and what I rank it, I give this game a solid overall rating of 9 out of 10. A lot of 9 out of 10s. This game is a very close 10 out of 10. A lot of the ratings were very close to 10 out of 10, and I think a lot of them are just so good. I think there are some big things though that hold this game down that I didn't mention though. And I think one of them is the bosses. Specifically Shao Kahn, because the Shao Kahn boss is overpowered. Like he is extremely difficult. He is beatable, but often at times I feel the need to switch the difficulty to make it slightly lower because normally I like to play it like either normal or hard mode, and having the need to turn it down by like a notch just to beat a boss just makes me feel so like unaccomplished, you know? But at the same time, he is pretty overpowered, and I think that they could have balanced him out a bit more. But still, very, very good game. Honestly, I give it 9.5 if that is a bit more fair. So that's a definite S tier. Mortal Kombat X is our next one. This is our sequel, not a direct sequel necessarily. It is the a game that takes place around 20 years later, featuring a large new cast of characters, a lot of new gameplay elements, more cinematic gameplay, better graphics, and a more unique story mode. So let's get right into this one. First off, let's get right into story mode because story mode is just I don't know what to think about it. Um, First off, we have the fact that most of our characters are now bad guys. There are a lot of the characters that died in the previous game are brought back to life as revenants and are basically slaves of Quan Chi and serve Shinnok, who is the main villain of the story, who's trying to take over all the realms. And he's starting with Earthrealm. So what we got to do is fight him and save the day. But here's the thing. With all of the good guys now dead and serving Shinnok, we only have very little characters to help us fight. There out of all the characters to survive in the last game, there was only like Raiden, Johnny Cage, Sonya. Um, that's basically it. Not many survive, but some things happen to save some characters. First off, Scorpion and Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Jax, in a flashback in the story mode, get revived and are brought back to life and return to humanity. Because of this, they become good guys again and help against the evil cause. They also, in the process where all these characters are living, um, birth a new cast of fighters to help us fight the evil. Specifically talking about, yes, you know them. You feel very weirdly about them. It's the Combat Kids, who are basically the rip-off version of the Special Forces. Um, a team of young heroes led by Johnny Cage, or at least taught by Johnny Cage, features a roster of both related of characters that are related to previous characters. There's Jackie Briggs, who's the daughter of Jax. There's what's her name? Cassie Cage, who's the daughter of both Johnny and Sonya. Um we have Kung Jin, who is the cousin of what's his name? Kung Lao, and then we have what's him? He's literally the most popular of the combat kids. Takeda, who is the son of Kenshi. Um, so a lot of these characters make a lot more appearances in the story mode. I honestly kind of like the combat kits. I know a lot of people don't like them just because some of the characters can be bland, repeats, and copies. But I find them pretty fun personally. At least most of them. I'm still like many. I'm not a fan of Jackie, but when it comes to the other three, I kind of like them, especially with how unique they can be at times. Um, Moving on, we have with the story mode, it ends off with a lot of characters being very unique. There are a lot of jobbers, which if you don't know what a jobber is in Mortal Kombat stories, basically it's a term that refers to a character that's not very important to the story and that appears mainly just to serve the bad guy. Um and that's what a lot of characters are in Mortal Kombat X, MKX here. There are jobbers, a lot of them in Mortal Kombat 9, but I find them a lot more unique and better than MKX and how they treat them in MKX. Um and then another thing in the story mode which I think is kind of a downside is that there's a lot of characters that they just copy and paste from Mortal Kombat 9 and then they allow you to fight them, but you can't actually play as them. Characters like Rain, Sindel, some of the other characters. Um and then they also have Tanya in the story mode, but she later appears as a DLC fighter to play as, so it's fine. But I do think it's very cool that you get to see characters like Sindel and others be fought in the story mode, which shows that they do care about these characters and they're willing to let them in the story. But they're also it's kind of sad that they don't let you actually play as them. But still, it's still pretty fun. Uh, the story mode overall, I think, is a good solid 8 out of 10. The visuals in the story mode are pretty good. The reasons that the character fights are that they fight is a lot better than Mortal Kombat 9, which I think is one thing I didn't mention, but a lot of characters fight for some dumb reasons sometimes. But I still think overall that the story mode is just it's pretty good, but there's definitely some flaws. Definitely a lot of jobbers, but still a lot of better scenarios than others. Next, we get right into characters. The roster is very all over the place. There is a lot of variety in the roster. Mortal Kombat 9 had a lot of variety. In this game, I don't think changes that theme at all. There are lots of new characters in the roster, featuring all of the combat kids who are all pretty unique on their own. Kung Jin has his own. Is the first character to really feature a bow in like his entire moveset. There are characters that use bow and arrows, like I don't know, Nightwolf, but he's the first one to actually embrace it in his moveset and have it being one of his main themes. Takeda with his cool like whips and being a mix of both Scorpion and Kenshi, which is really cool. Jackie is extremely bland though. I guess Cassie also is pretty unique. She's like a mix of Sonya and Johnny, but she keeps it unique enough and different to say I like her enough. But then we get to Jackie, who is like an extremely underwhelming version of her father. I just don't find her very fun to play personally. She's pretty cool, I guess, sometimes when you play her, but it's just at very specific times, and you never feel like she's just doing anything unique. It just feels like you're playing a faster version of her father, that I just don't find as fun. Um, but other than her, the roster's pretty good. There's a lot of other new characters I can like Ferrator. I know not everybody likes them, but personally, I find them pretty cool. Definitely one of my favorites to play in the game. I just find it funny that there's two characters in one, and I just think that's pretty cool. And then obviously we have that bug lady. I've already forget her name. But she's I don't know, mixed feelings all around for everybody for her. But still the characters are pretty good, the roster's good. And then the DLC characters are where the game really gets some umph. Adding so many horror characters from Jason Voorhees, Leatherface, the Xenomorph, and the Predator. You could play Alien versus Predator in the game, which is awesome. And then there's other original characters as DLCs, as Bo Raicho returns, Tanya returns, um, what's their name? Goro returns as a playable fighter. Um, there's one more. There's two more actually. Tremor returns as a playable fighter, which is awesome. And then we also got Triborg, who is a literal combination of actually four Mortal Kombat characters. It's got the three variations, which are Sector, Cyrax, and then Smoke. So Cyber Smoke returns. And then we also got Cyber Sub-Zero as a secret variant for it, which is really, really cool that there's a secret variant, which is very fun. And then there's also other things about the characters, which is obviously the different fighting styles, which we're gonna switch over to right now with the gameplay. For characters, by the way, I give characters a good 9 out of 10, just like Mortal Kombat 9. Um, Moving on, we got the gameplay. Gameplay is very, very fast paced. There is no slow paced in this game. There is only fast paced in this game. They want to make sure you're moving at all times. The run mechanic returns. There's limited amount of dodges. Dodges get better. Little dashes and stuff. X-rays are a thing. Which, by the way, X-rays were in Mortal Kombat 9, but I just didn't feel the need to mention them because they're cool and some of them can be pretty unique. But I just found them a bit just not as worth talking about. But I do find them more unique and worth talking about in Mortal Kombat X because they're more cinematic, more realistic, but also a lot more just harder to achieve. The bar does charge kind of fast like Mortal Kombat 9, but I just find it not as fast. That's just me though. Um, I just find Mortal Kombat X to be a pretty fun game. The gameplay very fast paced, which sometimes can be a little confusing, but it's still very fun. Combos are very simple like Mortal Kombat 9, and the characters' special moves are pretty good. And then we get into different characters' variations, which gives them completely new moveset attacks and special moves that make them different from other variations of the same fighter. It gives them different looks sometimes also, which is really, really cool. Ugh. Moving on from that, but for gameplay, honestly, I'm gonna give gameplay a 9 out of 10 just because of how good it is. It was also pretty fun. I do find it a bit too fast paced though to give it a 10 though. I think it can be a bit confusing with how fast they can be. And yeah. Moving on from that, we have the next thing we're talking about is collectibles. Unlockable stuff and all that fancy jazz. Um there is a lot less collectibles, in my opinion, in this game than Mortal Kombat 9. The crypt returns with you being able to move around and look and move around freely, but you have to move in a tile formation, which is fine. You still are going through graveyards, and you could go through different dimensions, but in different areas, which is fun. And you do get some good rewards, like getting brutalities, skins, and other unlockables. Which is, but I think there's some things that the crypt just isn't as fun at doing. First off, the fact that you do not get any of those unique, um, fun gameplay effects. Mortal Kombat X has the custom gameplay modifiers, but they're just not as cool or fun in my opinion as Mortal Kombat 9's, and I just find them just a bit more underwhelming. And then we also have the fact that a lot of the areas and places you can go, they're very cool. But I think some of them can be kind of underwhelming. The crab, the like for example, the what is it? What's his name? Quan Chi's little like laboratory place or something like that, or laboratory place is extremely underwhelming. There is a few chests, but there are no items. There's no cool mission. You just go in the little circle area and get some chests. That's it. Um, and then also, it's extremely underwhelming compared to the other area, that little, uh, like, place you unlock through Kenshi's sword, which is really cool compared to Quan Chi's place. I just think Crypt is pretty cool, but the rewards are a bit more underwhelming in my opinion, and I just find a lot of the map to be pretty underwhelming. So I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10 for unlockables. Um, Now that's everything I can think of. So for rating purposes, I think the game has better DLC fighters than Mortal Kombat 9. I think it has a lot more new characters, which is a plus. And I think the story mode and the more cinematic fatalities are very good. Which, by the way, I didn't talk about fatalities. I give fatalities a 9 out of 10, by the way. Real quick, they're pretty good. But, so I'm gonna give this game, I'm gonna also put it up there. But compared to the 9.5 I gave to Mortal Kombat 9, I'm gonna give this game just a 9. It's very good and it's very fun, but there are definitely some things that need to be worked out. By the way, I know there's a lot of things I haven't talked about, but I want to start getting through this pretty quickly. And also just the fact that there's some things that I just don't feel like worth talking about. Um, Next, the second newest of the games, Mortal Kombat 11. let's speed run through this one. First off, the story mode, I'm gonna give it immediately a rating of 8 out of 10. And here's my reasons why. First off, the things that make it good. The visuals and the cutscenes are very good. And I think a lot of the characters can be pretty funny at times, and a lot of the characters can be pretty cool. Just pretty awesome at times. And I just think it makes it pretty good. Two, the story mode is the story itself is pretty solid, but the story itself is pretty good, and some characters can be pretty enjoyable, as I've already mentioned. But at the same time, though, there's some negatives that also come with the story mode. I think the good parts is that a lot of previous characters return. They give us a lot of more unique looks at characters, and it just allows us to see more about them. Um, and then the last positive is probably the fact that there is a second story mode through DLC, which is pretty cool. Even if that second story mode's kind of underwhelming and a copy and paste. Um, and negatives. The final boss is I just don't really like Chronica. She is so all over the place in every way possible. First off, just like Shao Kahn, she is extremely difficult. She is not as difficult as Shao Kahn in my opinion, but I still believe her to be not very easy. She has a dinosaur attack thing that is completely unblockable. Or well, it is blockable, but you cannot dodge it. Also, the attacks that she has where she could just stun you and stuff like that are pretty overpowered. I guess she doesn't act or combo you with it, but it's still pretty bad at times. Also the fact that they gave her a fatality, even though she's not actually a playable character in the roster. I guess it's kind of neat and it gives you something to look at, but it's still, not a playable fighter, and she gets a fatality, which is just so annoying. And then also we have the fact that the DLC story mode is very much copy and paste. It does introduce a lot of the DLC fighters into it, but it's still just so underwhelming at times. But they do keep it different enough to say that it's still pretty okay. Um, but then also the fact that a lot of characters that they bring back in time back into it that they say were right there at the Mortal Kombat tournament, a lot of them have completely different looks than what they actually looked like in Mortal Kombat 9, which is what they should have looked like. Scorpion looks the past Scorpion and like stuff looks completely different than what he looked like in Mortal Kombat 9, which I find very underwhelming. But it is more references to their classic looks though, so I guess that's something. Um, Now we get into the characters. The roster is extremely underwhelming. It is not a necessarily small roster, but for some part of me feels like the game's roster is so much smaller. Like it looks so small compared to the other rosters. I just feel like the other Mortal Kombat 9 and X had bigger rosters, which I actually don't think they did, but it just looks so underwhelming. Especially since a lot of characters that you would want to return from X don't return, and some of the characters that you don't want to return do return. Like they threw out my guys Takeda and Kung Jin, and they let Jackie back into the story mode. I guess she did play a part in the story that was pretty important, but it didn't need to be there. Like, come on. At least they made her more unique and fun. I guess that's something. They gave a lot. I think one thing that they did for the characters is that a lot of their designs are very good in Mortal Kombat 11, and um they just have a lot of personality. Personally, I think one character that got a huge upgrade from in Mortal Kombat 11 is Cassie Cage. I don't know if people will agree with it on this. I find her design to be a lot better, a lot more personality put into it, and also I just think that she's just so much more fun in the game. And a lot more like her father, which is a good thing because everybody likes Johnny Cage. He's funny and cool. Um, but that's enough for the roster. They have the DLC fighters though. I think DLC are cut in half. We have the good half with characters like Joker, RoboCop, and no, I'd say more like Joker and Spawn. And then we got the other half, which are just so underwhelming. Um, Characters like RoboCop, Terminator, and Rambo are cool action heroes, and they definitely fit in Mortal Kombat. But with how they pulled them off, I just think that they could have done a bit better. But I still really like them in the games, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. So it's not the end of the world to say anything like that. But moving on, next, so for characters, I'm gonna give characters honestly an 8 out of 10. Um, just like the story mode. Um, Next we have gameplay. Gameplay already immediately, if you play the game, you will see negatives. First, they went from really fast paced to extremely slow paced. The game is it just runs it feels slower. So many characters are so laggy at times. Combos can be slow and lackluster. The game just feels so dull. It just feels so sluggish at times with characters. And I guess that's to make the characters and the visuals more appealing and lets you admire the game's extremely good visuals. But um still I just think that the gameplay is just so underwhelming. Also the disinclusion of a lot of the very fun things like the gameplay modifiers and stuff like that that you could just actively play with instead of being specific to game modes um is so sad because those were awesome and I'm so sad that those are gone. But at the same time though, I do think that characters can be pretty fun at times. I do like that some characters moves and attacks look different depending on skins they have, which I haven't talked too much about skins, but I don't really feel like it. I think those go enough with collectibles, but I still think that the game has some pretty uh out there gameplay. So for when it comes to gameplay, I'm gonna give that honestly a 7 out of 10, just because of how slow paced it can feel. Um, Next we get right into the fatalities. Fatalities in this game are immediately incredible. They are candy for the eyes. With how creative they can be at times, with how visually appealing they are, and just how unique they are at the same time. I just think it's incredible. Also, something I didn't talk about for the other games is it's mainly Mortal Kombat 9 is some of the other features they have like brutalities and babalities. Mortal Kombat 9's babalities are incredible, and honestly, those on its own are a 9 out of 10, but we're not really going to include that. The Mortal Kombat 11 returns with friendships, and friendships are obviously a S tier because they're just incredible. They're so funny, they're so goofy, they're so silly and cute, and I love them. It just shows the weak opposite versions of these characters, and it's just so fun. Um, and I really like it. And then also brutalities exist, but those are really just combos and stuff that you do, and I just don't find them as fun. But still, honestly, for fatalities, for Mortal Kombat 11, I give fatalities a 10 out of 10 because they are just beautiful. They are just the ultimate delicious feast for my eyes to chew on, which is a weird thing to say. But moving on, we got finally collectibles. The skins in the game are very out there. There are very good skins, and then there are very bad skins. A lot of the characters' designs are very good, as I mentioned before, but the collectibles can be kind of underwhelming. A lot of collectibles are just repeat reskin versions of existing skins. The gear in the game is pretty cool at times, but only a majority of the gear can be kind of underwhelming at times. Especially when some are just copy and paste, just like skins themselves. Um, you still can get fatalities and a lot of brutalities from things, and there also are new custom intros and outros for characters, which I think are cool. But I just think it's underwhelming. But I think the one thing that really holds the collectibles and stuff is the crypt game mode. The crypt is a now open world thing where you actually get to play as a character and do things. You get to go through traps, somewhat fight enemies, get unlock different areas of the map, do crafting and stuff, unlock different things, use currencies and stuff like that. There was currencies in the other games, but still, it just shows how the game really upped up the crypt game mode, and I think personally this is the best of the crypts has ever been. So I think honestly for collectibles, being held by the crypt is a 9 out of 10. Just because of the crypt, though. A lot of the other collectible stuff can be kind of underwhelming, but if you don't look at the bad stuff, the crypt and then the good skins and collectibles you can get are pretty cool. Especially when the fatalities are technically also collectibles. Um Next we get right into the actually no, that's it for Mortal Kombat 11. Honestly, putting this, I will put it right below. I give Mortal Kombat a rating of honestly 8 out of 10. It is a fun game. The story mode is enjoyable, the DLC is fun, and there are things that can make you enjoy the game, but if you are like a competitive player, you like the more fast-paced gameplay, or if you just want a bit more time to play and less collectibles or hardness and just want to just play for the fun and have fun the entire time, I don't know if this is your game. But still, it's a still pretty good game overall. Finally, the newest game, Mortal Kombat 1, which as I promised many times already, we will play it on the channel. It will just take a while and it may not be until a while until we play it. But Mortal Kombat 1, um, from what I've seen so far, from what the game is right now, is extremely good. The game goes back into the good medium, fast, and slow paced balance that Mortal Kombat 9 had for its gameplay, and I really like that. The It keeps a lot of the best qualities of the past games and make it very fun. I do think that it once again lacks the whole gameplay modifiers. I miss those. That was one thing I really liked. But I do think making up for it by having stuff like that in game modes like the invasions is pretty cool. Um, so for story mode, I give the story mode honestly a 9 out of 10. This I There was not a single character I didn't like in the story mode. Some of the villains can be pretty entertaining to watch. Every character's voice is great, and I love the fact that in this new timeline, a lot of previous villains are now good guys. Baraka not being a jobber and actually having a more important role, and being a good guy, and having a good design, and being competitively viable, they did Baraka some good justice. Melina also gets some good feats for having her look very good, very unique. Her cotton look is very different from Baraka, and I really like that with the more predator mouth. And I just think they just did a lot of characters really good. The story mode gets really out there and starts throwing out a lot of stuff around the end when they're trying to wrap up the story, which I get. That's not NetherRealm's fault. That's Warner Brothers' fault for wanting to get the game out early. But still, I found it pretty good overall. And the ending battle is pretty cool. And I like that in the tower endings, you can do that same battle against them. And you get to see you and your cameo beat them. And it's pretty cool. Um, and then also at the end, the fact that you get to choose your own fighter is also pretty cool. And the tower and all the characters you get to see him fight that are like alternate versions of characters combined. Very, very cool. I really like that. That's a lot of cool characters that can be a lot of good skins for the game that they should add in the future. But um so next we have the characters. The roster is still developing. It is not a small roster right now, and it is going to be developed more and have a lot of DLC characters from what we've seen. We already know that at there will be a separate roster of fighters with new um three new of guest characters featuring these like darker versions of superheroes of dark brutal comics with characters like Homelander, Omni-Man, and Peacemaker who are very popular at the time of their reveal, which is really cool. And then we also got characters like Quan Chi, um Ermac, and Takeda returning, which is really cool. Really happy Takeda's returning. Excited to see how they do him. But but also that is our separate roster, cameos, which will also feature as DLCs and future DLC stuff in Combat Pack 1. I just think the roster's so fun with how the cameos work and the fact that they're just like not story related necessarily. They're just kind of there for fun. And 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 then also the fact that the roster is just so fun with how a lot of characters are pulled off. The gameplay is so fun and it's really good. Honestly, I give the Right Games roster a 10 out of 10 with how promising it looks in the future and how it is right now. I think it's pretty good. I don't see very much negatives at all, honestly. Um, Next we get right into let's see, we get gameplay, story, that um hmm I think we get into collectibles. Collectibles in the game are still also developing and they are very underwhelming at the time of being this. We have a lot of collectibles through stuff. You can get a lot of skins. The crypt is completely gone, which is already a negative. Um you only can get money collectibles through the story mode, through invasions is the main way. Invasions is the new crypt basically. Which invasions is fun and it's a good way to get the collectibles to keep you entertained, but still like I miss the crypt. And I just think that invasions is promising and I like it so far, but I just think collectibles right now just need time to develop. So right now, I'm only going to be giving collectibles an 8 out of 10, but it might improve over time. Next, and the final thing is fatalities. This game took Mortal Kombat 11's incredible fatalities and visuals, and they cranked it up beyond 11. They went straight to the 12, the 13, and beyond. The visuals in this game are so good. Each character is so realistic. It is beyond candy. It is beyond a feast. This is an entire restaurants filled. Uh, this is the entire stock owned food of a restaurant. This is it's it's just awesome. I love it. The fatalities are so creative. They are so visually appealing. They're so cool and fun. And the fact that there's still more to come in the future for the game just shows how promising they are. And honestly, because of that, I'm gonna give fatalities a good 10 out of 10. Um, Slightly held down by that $10 Halloween fatality, but we don't want to talk about that, do we? But the fact that you can get new fatalities that any character can use is awesome. So because of that, I'm gonna give this game a higher rating than Mortal Kombat X, and I'm gonna be giving it a good 9.5 out of 10, just like Mortal Kombat 9. I think the game is extremely promising and may surpass Mortal Kombat 9 in ratings in the future if the game can really amp up with the DLC and other things coming in the future with updates. Also, before we go, by the way, um, I would like to ask you guys in the comments down below if you guys would like me to play the older games of the 3D era of Mortal Kombat games and play all of those. Mortal Kombat DC versus DC Universe included. If you guys would like to see that, leave comments down below if you guys would like to see that, and I'll definitely see if I can make it happen. But that's my rating for the ranking. If you guys agree with all this stuff, make sure you like comments down below on what you guys think. And other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Goodbye.